You're mine, baby, you're my favorite waste of time.
Well, it's Sunday, the 6th of April, 2008. Welcome to the Tap Keg Craft Brewer, and you better get the keg out this time because we've got so much to cover so quickly, you will be utterly dazzled and amazed. And if you're not pissed during the program, you're going to miss it all because you won't understand a word I say. But anyway, addresses. Web address, oz.craftbrewer.org. Heaps of brewing information on there. Or oz.craftbrewer.org for the illiterates out there. Also heaps of brewing information out there. Address? Well, there's the Slack address, and that's luckyian@smartchat.net.au, or the superior I will respond address, that's Graham L. Sanders @westnet.com.au. Of course, the radio program's found on radio.craftbrewer.org. All the archive stuff is there. And if you want to send us any information by snail mail, Graham Sanders, 3 Hazel Street, Rasmussen, Townsville, North Queensland, Australia, 4815. And Craft Brewer, don't forget about the Skype. Yes, Skype is available, and I do have a recording facility on the computer to take messages. Just search up Craft Brewer or my name, and you'll come across me in Australia, and you're more than welcome to have a chat or leave a message. And why do we ask for this information? Well, we're after your feedback for topics on the program. We're after your articles that cover anything about beer or booze in general. We're after MP3 files if you're so inclined. You name it, you send it, and we'll ignore it. But anyway, what's on this program? Well, I've had so many requests to get up the Cellarman, I think it's about time we do it. So all through the program, we're going to give him shit. Just for the craft brewer out there who have suffered him for 12 months with non-responsive emails, with crap on the radio program, whatever. And besides that, the slack bastard is here as well, and he's muted out. He can't say a word. He's just sitting there. You can see him. He's bitten at the teeth. He wants to do things. He can't say a word. I've got it all sussed out. What's that, Cellarman? Yeah, see, yeah, you can't say a word. I've got you done. But anyway, mate, what else is on the program? Well, a funny thing happened to me on my way to making a Stein beer. We'll cover that. Grain prices. Some repercussions are happening around the world as we speak. So we're going to cover that with a couple of articles that I've downloaded. Quite interesting. A gaggle, an utter gaggle of the weird and wacky world of beer is going to fill up the program. And in our topic this program, a truly beginner's guide to brewing. For the person out there who hasn't even thought about brewing, listens to all the rubbish out there and wants the very bare bones basics of brewing, we're going to cover that, and a song request to finish up. But, as you know, Craft Brewer, I've been recruited by the United Nations to cover the world supply of aluminium, that great metal used by the barley crusher malt mill, the best darn malt mill in the world because it uses a superior aluminium body with its cold rolled steel rollers. Yes, the United Nations recruited me, and I've been helping Rio Tinto fight off the advances of BHP. Well, I suggested to Rio Tinto that they up their market share and up their public image and also get in bed with the competition. In other words, prostitute yourself, Rio Tinto. And did they listen to the most egotistical brewer on the World Wide Web? Bloody oath they did, mate. Bloody oath. Have a listen to this.
In the latest evidence of shifting economic sands, the mining giant Rio Tinto wants to change the way it does business with China. Rather than simply treat its biggest client as a lucrative customer, Rio Tinto wants to develop partnership deals with China's steel and investment companies. Rio Tinto's chief executive, Tom Albanese, says,
I think this is just merely focused on something that I think is good business, that we do see China's GDP continuing to grow over the next several years. They're not going to be the only ones growing. I think we'll see India also growing, but maybe from a lower base at this time from China. But we do see China being interested.
Yes, they have. They've done a deal with China. They're sleeping with the devil. And why? To fight off BHP. Yes, the world listens to me, and I don't know why. Speaking of people who want to listen to me, I better get the Cellarman in on this. G'day, Cellarman!
Nobody wants to listen to you. God, you woke me up out of a good sleep then too, up you're rambling on and puts anyone to sleep, you know.
Oh, what are you talking about? It's exciting, it's fast-paced, it's current too, that's the important thing about it, and no other program does this.
Well, that's all I'll say to that one.
Yeah, no other one would dare, would they?
No, that's it.
And I tell you what, as I said, mate, this is shit on you show because you
What's new?
are a slack bastard, aren't
What's
you?
new?
I've had complaints.
Look, I carry you on my shoulders all this time now, and you're going to put shit on me. What's new about that?
Well, put it this way, mate. Ever since I've got the email back, that's come thick and fast. How slack you really has been.
Yeah.
And to the craft brewer out there, I'll show you how slack the Cellarman really is. Remember the fridge, mate?
Hey, it doesn't worry me in the slightest.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
I only answer emails I think are interesting anyway.
Yeah, well,
so.
here you go, craft brewer. This is how slack the Cellarman is. He comes up to me the other day and says, oh, guess what? A U-Butte fridge has turned up. Perfect working condition. Excellent looking fridge. It works. It's great. It'd be great for all the beer kegs. It only cost you $50, Graham. Puts his hand out. So I thought, oh, yeah, good deal. Gave him the $50. Off he trots. Well, go over his place the next day. Expecting to see a fridge. No fridge. He comes home. Does he mention anything about a fridge? Absolutely nothing at first. Just hops out of the car. We have a beer. Not a comment's made. Next minute, throws the $50 at me and then says, oh, the fridge is shit, Graham. Sorry, doesn't work properly. Isn't that right, Cellarman?
Well, it's like any faux pas. It's only got to be 1% truth. You got 1% there so far.
Yeah,
I came home and had a beer.
Yeah,
that's the only true bit we got so far.
And then Craft Brewer, what does he do? Proceeds to show me temperature controllers and other knickknacks out of the fridge worth zillions of dollars, worth far more than the $50, and says, oh, Graham, since the fridge doesn't work, I scrounged all these for myself. You grub. You are lower than a snake's belly, you are.
In a wagon rut, thank you.
You got it. You grub. You took a temperature controller worth $50, didn't you, straight out of it?
Yeah, of course.
A whole lot of other shit.
You weren't getting that whether the fridge worked or not.
Yeah, see that? You are a grub. You don't even ring me up and say, Graham, the fridge is no good, do you still want it? No, you commandeered it all, didn't you?
Well, you weren't, no matter whether the fridge was perfect or not, you weren't getting the temperature control.
You are a grub.
That was coming off anyway. That was mine.
You are a
Besides,
grub.
you've got a temperature control. You don't need a second one.
I've got 3.
Well,
no,
there you
you've
go.
got 3.
See, look at this. Now, look at this. Now, listen to this, will you? He's got 3 there, and he's begrudging me 1 electronic temperature controller.
Yeah, but it's the underhand measure.
It wasn't underhand at all.
Yep.
Did you get your money back? So you had bought absolutely nothing. What did you get? Absolutely nothing. So you're straight back where you started from. There's no complaints whatsoever.
Yes,
you
I love
been
the legal
diddled.
way you did that. You gave me the money back. You gave me the money back first, and then told me how you
haven't been
stripped
diddled
it
at
bare.
all. You got your money back because the fridge wasn't working, right? So you've lost nothing. So you don't deserve to get anything in return.
Now, doesn't that tell you, Crafter out there, you've suffered for a year. I now understand why you've suffered for a year with him. You can always get me now, Graham L. Sanders at westnet.com.au.
Yeah, if you can put up with his rambling and rants and carry
Enjoying
on.
the Vienna we're drinking, by the way.
Oh, it's not too bad for a scungy old Sanders beer, but, you've improved, I must admit. At least the clarity's there for a change.
Yeah, you were complaining that the lager yeast I gave you was non-flocculating, weren't you?
Oh, I didn't say it was non-flocculating. I said it was very low flocculating.
Well, it has cleared up. Just to prove to you it has flocculated.
Oh,
And, of course, I
it
enjoy...
works. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah, and, of course, I enjoy this time of the year, Cellarman. It's starting to cool down. It's still 30 degrees during the day, but it's now getting a little bit cooler at night. We're getting down to 23, 22. And now it's the time to get into the German lagers. And for me, my brewing schedule is, of course, the Vienna. We've got the Bock and then a Doppelbock coming along the way. But I'm not going to go into this beer. As we said many times before, sucks to do all this thing. Great to drink it, but isn't it, mate?
Always is. But who cares? I don't care what they think out there anyway. I don't care what anyone thinks out there.
Well, that's bloody obvious because of the fridge and the emails.
Hey, I'm where I am. I don't care about them. Why should I give a shit?
And what other news do you have? Slack.
Well, yeah.
You slack for news, slack for research. You're all slack right across the board.
No. You might have a Vienna here, but I got a triple.
Look, I don't give a damn. I've been told by the listeners to get on your case, and on your case, this program shall be.
You can get on my case as much as you like.
Slack, and slack.
The only reason you do this program is because no one else will talk to you in the world.
Look, truth, there's no point in saying truths on this program.
Well, that's what I keep telling you. A faux pas only got to be 1% truth, and that's what you've given, 1% truth so far. So what more can I say?
Now, mate.
But before we go any further, I've got my usual customary joke.
Oh, here we go. Let's hear it.
This is called the best genie story.
Oh, by the way, before you tell your joke, Cellarman, I heard on Brew Crazy that they actually admire the way you deliver a joke. They actually said on their program that, gee, you tell a joke properly and they're listening to you carefully so they can deliver it properly. Because they're shit at doing it.
If they want to deliver it properly, just tape mine and then put it over your program.
Hey, there you go, John. Why don't you just tape Ian's jokes and let him tell them on your program? Okay, so what joke have you got?
A husband takes his wife to play golf. Her first game, of course, right? The wife promptly hacks her first shot right through the window of a biggest house adjacent to the course.
Oh, dear.
Of course. The husband cringed. I warned you to be careful. Now we'll have to go up there, find the owner, apologise, and see how much that lousy drive is going to cost us. So the couple walk up to the house, knock on the door. A warm voice answers, come on in. When they opened the door, they saw the damage that was done. The plate glass window was shattered, glass all over the place, and a broken antique bottle was lying on its side near the pieces of window glass.
Oh, dear.
A man reclining on a couch asked, are you the people that broke my window? Yeah, sir. We're sure sorry about that, the husband replies. Oh, no apology is necessary. Actually, I wanted to thank you. You see, I'm a genie, and I've been trapped in that bottle for 1,000 years. Now that you release me, I'm allowed to grant 3 wishes. I'll give you each one wish, but if you don't mind, I'll keep the last one for myself. I'd like $1 million a year for the rest of my life. No problem, said the genie. You've got it. It's the least I can do, and I'll guarantee you a long, healthy life. And now, you, young lady, what do you want? I'd like to own a gorgeous home, complete with servants in every country in the world, she said. Consider it done, the genie said. And your home will always be safe from fire, burglary, and natural disasters. What's your wish, genie? Well, says the genie, since I've been trapped in that bottle and haven't been with a woman in more than 1,000 years, my wish is to have sex with your wife. So the genie and the woman went upstairs where they spent the rest of the afternoon enjoying each other. The genie was insatiable. After about 3 hours of non-stop sex, the genie rolls over and looks directly into her eyes and asks, how old are you and your husband? Why, we're both 35, responds breathlessly. No kidding, he says. 35 years old, and you both still believe in genies?
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, I like that. Okay, let's get back on to beer-related stuff, Cellarman. Now, to shit you right off because you've been unfaithful to the craft brewer out there and a disgusting individual to all the brewers of the world.
Yeah, that's me.
I made a Stein beer, and I didn't invite you, did I?
I've noticed that.
Yes, I made it, nicked R2D2,
I noticed
the furnace.
that. I noticed he was missing.
Made my own beer without you.
And I noticed the burnt patch on your lawn.
Yep, I did it all. And that craft brewer is for you out there because he's so slack. But it didn't go all my own way, mate, unfortunately. I want you to look at this. Have a look at this thing at the moment. Hang on. Okay. That's one of the big granite rocks.
Yep.
Now, I had to smash that up with a sledgehammer. And it was like in the comics you see when you throw a sledgehammer onto the rock and the hammer bounces off again. You've seen those comics where you see that?
Yep.
Right. Well, I was doing that. These things took ages to break. Anyway, I broke them down to softball sizes. A softball is bigger than a baseball, but twice the size. Anyway, I broke them down, put them in the furnace, ran the furnace for 4 hours. Now, this is amazing, Cellarman. I lifted the lid off. This is what I found.
You've been digging in the backyard in the gravel pit, haven't you?
It's gravel. It's turned to gravel. I've turned lumps of solid rock into gravel.
See, that'll teach you not to invite the professional along when you do these type of beers. The bloke who knows what he's doing.
Bloody amazing. And what's happened, craft brewer, is I thought I got these rocks deep enough in a quarry that they were okay. And what's happened is the moisture has seeped through the rock in tiny, minute cracks and fissures in the rock, so minute that it was just enough to splinter the rock into pieces. That'd be no bigger than tiny, half a pea or a quarter of a pea.
About a pea size, a little bit less.
Yeah. So tiny little...
Undernourished pea at that.
So you know what I had to do, Cellarman? I've made a Stein beer.
Without the Stein.
No, I've made a Stein beer, but I don't think it's a Stein beer as such. I think it's a gravel beer. Don't know what the word gravel means in German. Let me know if you know craft brewer. That's Graham L. Sanders at westnet.com.au. I have made a gravel beer. And I used the gravel. You had to see it, Cellarman. I've got this hot gravel, probably at about 800 degrees Celsius, and I'm sort of pouring it in a ladle.
Wouldn't have much caramelisation there.
Well, I tell you, it's still foamed up and kicked and spurted and carried on. It's going to be just yet another interesting experiment with the Stein beer. And interesting, thank God the furnace is enclosed, because you could imagine you had this on an open fire, Ian. It could have been quite dangerous, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could have been, how would you say, shrapnelled.
Shrapnelled, yeah. And they warn you about using weathered rocks, craft brewer, and making Stein beers, any rocks that are weathered, because water in tiny pockets in the rock can explode under the high heat and actually fracture the rock like a mini explosion. You've seen that, Ian, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. It's what it is. It turns the water to steam, and the steam is obviously a greater volume than the water itself, and it's at a great pressure.
Well, anyway, mate, I managed to get enough, I'd call them about ping-pong ball-sized rocks to do the Stein beer, and the rest I used as gravel. So I still made a Stein beer, and we'll still get to try it. But for the craft brewer out there doing the experiments, don't take the risk of going out to gravel quarries and hopefully getting the right piece. It is risky. You probably might be lucky and be okay. I would suggest you do what we did with the original experiments and go to a place that digs the gravel from deep underground. And where did we get ours from?
Oh, buddy, it was a tabletop maker, wasn't it, or was it a tombstone maker?
Well, both would work. A tombstone maker who digs it from deep underground, a benchtop maker from a kitchen shop that makes granite or marble benchtops where they dig the rock from deep underground because they can't afford to have it flake. Get the rock from somewhere where you know it comes from deep underground. Most interesting, my friend. Now, I put out the request for more Bloke Man episodes. If you're out there, craft brewer, and want to be part of the Bloke Man revolution, I'm after requests. Don't know who Bloke Man is? Well, you've heard it on the program many times, haven't we, sir?
Oh, certainly have. He's an Australian icon.
Well, you can actually see him. Pen and paper ready, craft brewer? Go to YouTube and just do a search, BLOKEMAN for the international listeners. You'll see there's about 6 there. You'll get an idea what Bloke Man's like. Look him up. Here's his intro for those who don't know who he is, that rare few.
Whilst working late one night on his latest batch of home brew, mild-mannered meteorologist Warren Parks discovered a yeast infection had infiltrated his infusing amber fluid.
Oh no, over-fermentation.
Which can only result in... Drenched in the badly brewed beverage, our hero forecasts a change.
Energy draining, apathy building, mullet growing.
Then, rising from the settled suds was the man the world needs. Bloke Man.
But I don't work Sundays or me day off.
I'll put the intro, I'll put sound effects in if you like as well. I'm happy to do it. Give us some Bloke Man episodes, and I don't care if he's an Italian, French, even Russian. Bring it along. I believe I could have a dog Bloke Man coming in shortly. But look up YouTube for it. Please do. And I've got a request for international people round the world. I want to restart up my international series on interviewing craft brewers around the world. If you're interested, contact me, Graham L. Sanders at westnet.com.au, or Skype me. You must have Skype so we can do the interview together.
Don't bother calling me, I won't answer.
That's dead right. So, start thinking about anybody around the world who wants to be part of the international series. Please think about contacting me. I'll start that up soon.
And on that note, I'm going to have a good beer.
Oh, what's this beer you brought out?
I've got a triple.
This is the triple that we tasted a bit green last program.
Yeah,
so it's
yeah,
still going to be green, but you just can't help yourself, can you?
No, I always make 2 kegs. One to mature and get the full flavour, one just to get pissed on.
And we're getting pissed, are we?
Well, why not? It's this
Look,
time.
you're trying to butter me up here.
No, I don't give a shit.
Because you're in the shit at the moment, big time.
Hey, I've never been out of the shit. It's only the depth that varies.
Yep, I tell you what, that's an old but true saying. Once you're in the shit, you might as well go all the way, because up to your ankles or up to your neck, it still smells the same.
Look at it this way, mate. I'd rather be hung for a lion than a lamb.
And speaking of all these emails, gee, I regret going onto the internet. I am swamped with emails.
And I'm glad you did.
I am swamped with Skype.
My mailbox is finally starting to be a bit empty.
Well, I tell you, I am getting swamped, Craft Brewer. I don't mind it, but Jesus, it's taken some of my bloody time away. And I tell you what, I'm so swamped, but I've got a recording thing on the computer and it records any Skype messages. But I tell you, if I get one more message like this...
Here's Graham. This is Zach Mann from the Global Beer Tribe, one of your big fans here in the East Coast of the United States, calling from Virginia. I just wanted to give you a shout out and just tell you how much we love your program. You and the Cellarman with all your drivel is just a real joy, and I pick up a lot of good tips.
I don't want to be sucked up to. I've got a wife that does that. Oops, out of the gutter, Graham.
No, more importantly, he's got a vacuum cleaner.
A blow-up doll does the same job. Anyway.
Speaking of dolls.
Oh, here we go.
An Australian love poem. And they think Australians aren't romantic.
Okay, go for it. Is it quick?
Of course I love you, darling. You're a bloody top-notch bird. And when I say you're gorgeous, I mean every single word. So your bum is on the big side. I don't mind a bit of flab. It means that when I'm ready, there's something there to grab. So your belly isn't flat anymore. I tell you, I don't care. So long as when I cuddle you, I can get my arms round there. No Sheila who is your age has nice round perky breasts. They just gave into gravity, but I know you did your best. I'm telling you the truth now, I'd never tell you lies. I think it's very sexy that you got dimples on your thighs. I swear on me Nana's grave now, the moment that we met, I thought you were as good as I was ever going to get. No matter what you look like, I'll always love you, dear. Now shut up while the footy's on and fetch another beer.
Love it. Love it. So, yes, I don't need a whole rambling lot of emails. It is nice to get the responses that you enjoy the program, Craft Brewer. But give me something I can work with the program, please. And I know I'm the number one program. Even Johnny Max from Brew Crazy admits that this program is the best. When I asked him what's the best brewcast out there, this is what he had to say.
The number one podcast in the world. Big-headed cane toad.
And I do appreciate it, Johnny, that you admit we are the number one podcast and brewcast out there. Thanks very much, mate.
Of course, we have to be.
We
are the best.
Of course, they all look up to us, or down to us, as the case may be. Anyway, mate, let's get on with this program and stop this self-admiration society. I hate that sort of shit.
Like egotistical brewer on the World Wide Web, and he hates that sort of shit.
Oh, shut
God,
up.
listen to it.
Now, on previous programs, Cellarman, we've talked about the grain crisis and the cost of grain going up and all the rest of it.
I think we've just about done it to deaths, actually.
Well, you would think I've done it to death. Well, since I've got the email and now contactable, I've got a whole lot of bloody crap coming in saying, what a load of bullshit, it's not happening, it's conspiracy theories. People are still doubting that there's a major shift in the world that we're going to have to get used to. We're going to have to get used to higher grain prices, higher petrol prices. We've got to change our thinking in the world. Resources are running out. People are still sitting there saying it's a conspiracy theory. It is not, people. And I'm going to play you now a nice little segment. Lasts for about 10 minutes if you're bored shitless and want to just fast forward 10 minutes. It's on the grain prices going up. But more importantly, listen to the last bit because it justifies everything we've said on this program before about changing your lifestyle. Have a listen.
Well, global demand has in recent years driven prices for resources to record levels, and as we know, the big miners like BHP and Rio are reaping the benefits. But in the past 12 months, a new commodities boom, unrelated to the mining of minerals and metals, has been gathering pace. Prices for so-called soft commodities, wheat, corn, soybeans, dairy products, to name a few, they have gone through the roof. In the case of wheat, the humble grain has risen 500% in just over a year. Now, you don't see many rises quite like that. Once again, on the face of it, this is very good news for Australia and its legion of primary producers. But what are the broader implications of this rush on agricultural products, an event that could start to look like a classic tale of boom and bust? Brett Stevenson is the Managing Director of Market Check. It's a firm that advises government and industry on developments and trends in the agricultural commodities sector. Welcome to Saturday Extra, Brett.
Morning, Geraldine.
What's driving this boom in the so-called soft commodities? I assume China must come into play here somewhere?
Yes, it's a bit of a combination. You know, there's a few things collided together, and probably the two key elements is improving lifestyles and therefore demand in continental Asia and also China. But also that factor has run into the growth of ethanol and development of ethanol, mostly in the northern hemisphere. And so the demand from those two sectors are running into each other and, of course, driving prices to incredible levels.
Are prices booming across all products, as has largely been the case with resources, or is there a bit of selectivity here?
Well, no, it's not across all sectors. I mean, take, for instance, cotton. Cotton really, although there has been a big rally, at present the prices are not much higher than where they've been in recent times. So that hasn't changed much, and the products, say, for instance, like wool, has shifted up a little bit, but nothing to the order of what the grains have.
So the perfect storm, as it were, is really only about food, is it?
Pretty much. It's all happening. It's kind of interesting, actually. There's this thing they call the acre war, and what that's about is ethanol is taking away those sorts of products like corn and other sort of lower grade grains, if you like, into the ethanol industries. And by taking away those grains, it's creating a reduced number of acres for food, and therefore, the food type grains are lifting accordingly.
So it's classic supply and demand kicking in.
Absolutely.
Given that the long-term potential of biofuel is still really an unknown, I mean, in the US they have a modest aim of ethanol accounting for 5% of fuel by 2017, in a way, the strength of that market for corn appears rather speculative.
Well, definitely the ethanol industry, if you look at it economically, doesn't stack up. And the other thing about it is, as you mentioned, even with an incredible amount of corn in terms of proportion of the crop, and we're talking, I think, 2017 by nearly half the corn crop going into ethanol in the US, to make up what is a fairly small proportion of fuel. You do wonder if at some stage the political process starts to say, well, food's getting way too expensive. What are we doing? We're creating fuel for cars at the expense of making food far more expensive, and whether that policy will stack up over time is questionable.
Talking of speculation, wheat has risen 5-fold in just over a year. It is really quite incredible to look at the graphs. I urge people, if they see them in newspapers or on Alan Kohler's shows, to just have a look. Doubled in price since January the 1st this year. I mean, it sounds awfully like a bubble forming.
It is pretty incredible. I got to say, though, wheat was at pretty low levels. There wasn't much movement for some time, and then, yes, all of a sudden we've had an explosion. But
well, in fact, I think it dropped in price, didn't it, during the 80s? Between 1985 and, 1985 onwards, it actually dropped in price.
Yeah, we've had some, that's right, and we've had some pretty low levels in the years of 03, 04 and 05 for cropping here in Australia, so it's an amazing turnaround. But yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is where you're saying there can be or could be a bust is can the world respond in terms of the number of acres, that are going to be put into wheat, because there's things like set-aside programs with the governments where they hold acres away from production in places like America and Europe. But can there be an increase in acres enough to grow enough crop to satisfy these new demands and therefore bring the price down?
But we've seen some remarkable changes on those set-aside land plots, haven't we? Very recently, Germany has this year released all of its set-aside land, 4 million hectares.
That's right. They've basically said, well, why are we holding this back? Because the prices are very high. We should be allowing this area to come back into production. It's not quite as simple in the US, although there's the potential for, I think, somewhere in the order of 1.5 to 2 million acres to come back into stream this year. But, there's that component, and there's also the fact that farmers, which in country they would have normally used for other activities or felt was too marginal for cropping, when you've got the price this high, they'll have a go. So, and we're seeing that sort of response in Australia. We're seeing Australian farmers lift the amount of acres that they're putting into crops such as wheat this year also, because the price is so high.
Well, I gather you've seen firsthand exactly the impact this boom is having on Australian producers. In Western New South Wales this week, all around the place, you saw developed pasture land being cleared to make way for wheat. Now, this is pretty astonishing, isn't it, given the hardship the farming sector's gone through in recent years to hang on to their pasture?
Well, yeah, Geraldine, I was down at Mangapla and Lockhart and down some of these areas in southern New South Wales this week, just addressing farmers in those areas. And at the forums there were companies that provide chemical and that sort of thing for weed control. And yeah, we are seeing farmers that have obviously developing pastures takes a long time and it's a bit of a labour of love, if you like. But there are guys who are spraying out pasture to increase the amount of area they're cropping, and I suppose that shows, I guess, the potential profitability from putting grain in. It probably shows also a little bit of desperation from people to create income in a year where the prices are up. So it's a bit of a combination, I think.
And WA graziers are allegedly sending their sheep east for sale at rock-bottom prices because all available land is being freed up for cropping wheat.
Yeah, we've had sheep prices in the west drop to levels where people could buy them and truck them to the east, and they were cheaper than the markets over here. And that the sale of those sheep is that's nothing. That's not got to do, if you like, the sheep market falling in Western Australia so much in response to external factors. It's got to do with people creating space for farming. So. Again, Geraldine, it's interesting that will reduce the supply of other commodity, like of sheep. So it's having other sort of effects on other industries.
Well, final question, Brett. What are the broader implications here? I mean, it sounds like bad news for consumers, to be honest, and maybe another driver of global inflation.
Well, Geraldine, we'll get down to that issue I mentioned at the beginning. I think if food prices in China are travelling at about 12% inflation at the moment, and if at the end of the day food becomes very expensive and it becomes political, I think you may get some sort of reaction where the government says, well, hang on, what are we doing making fuel out of food?
I suppose I was thinking more of, there were those old days, I can remember them. It's a long time ago now, though, when food prices traditionally led inflation, and that hasn't been happening. We haven't really thought of that, but they are creeping up. Are you suggesting that that's likely to be embedded?
Well, Geraldine, you're dead right. We've been through a period where food has been fundamentally cheap, I suppose, and not a big element of the weekly spend budget in terms of what it was. And there has been a lot of comment out there globally that maybe food in terms of proportion of consumer spend is going back to the bad old days, if you like, or good old days if you're a farmer.
Yes, quite. All right, then. Thank you very much, Brett.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great overview. Brett Stevenson. He's the Managing Director of Market Check. It advises industry and government on trends in the agricultural commodity.
So, Ian, does that justify our position that we've been having all the time?
Well, I can put it as simple as this. Told you so, told you so, told you so!
We are the trendsetters of brewing information and your lifestyle changes here, Craft Brewer. And as they said, wheat's gone up 500% in a year.
Good thing we don't brew so much with wheat, isn't
it? That's
right.
And as they say, what we've said before, driving it, India and China with their improved lifestyle.
Ethanol. I'll have a word to my wife about this when I get home.
Yeah, exactly. Her country's causing a lot of problems here. But also, a lot's being soaked up for ethanol production. How's that half of America's corn crop is going to be soaked up by the year 2017 just to supplement their petrol by 5% of ethanol?
Yeah.
It's madness.
It is. They need to change their bloody style of cars and get rid of their bloody big Yank tanks and these big V8s and that and get back to realistic type vehicles.
Exactly. They've got to learn that to change their lifestyle, the days of cheap petrol are gone. They're complaining at the moment, petrol getting up to something like 70 cents a litre and thinking it's dear. What do we pay?
They're paying about $3 a gallon or something at present.
About 70 cents a litre.
Yeah.
What do we pay in Australia?
Pay $1.30 to $1.45 a litre.
Double, and that's the normal standard price. In Europe, they pay about $3 a litre. These are the prices you're going to have to get used to. And especially in the United States, it is causing this problem. And even though places like Germany and Australia are now ploughing up every available bit of dirt they can find to plant wheat and barley and grains in general, it is not going to cut it. China and India are going to soak this up as quick as you can do it. But the interesting thing I found was the last bit where they talked about food in China has gone up 12% in a year and is continuing to rise. Mate, that's the first thing. And China is sucking up food like you wouldn't believe. And they're paying for it. If food goes up 12% a year in China, that means world demand goes up 12% a year in price as well. Because if the Chinese are prepared to pay 12% more for their food every year, it means all around the world, food will go up by 12% a year. And the other interesting thing, as we said before, the commentator said, Ian, I remember the olden days where food was a major part of our budget and food was an inflation index. And we've been living through a golden time for the last probably 20 years where food has dropped away. And the commentators said, guess what? Food is again going to become an economic drive around the world.
Yeah, well, that was it when I was growing up with my parents, and that the first thing that was ever bought when the wages come in was the bloody food for the family.
And they said it on the program, we'll say it again, get used to it, Craft Brewer. Food will become a major component again. It's going to get dear. Think we're joking, Craft Brewer. Here's a story from Argentina. Now, we've talked about there's countries around the world that are putting tariffs on food exports to feed their own population. Now, a tariff, for those who don't know, is basically the government sticks its hand out and says, pay us X amount of money before the food gets exported.
Yeah,
in other words,
export tax.
It's export tax. It increases the price of the produce. And why did it do that? Because then more food becomes available to the people of the country.
Technically, this is true.
Technically, it's true. But in Argentina, the farmers are going on strike over this. Have a listen to this.
That's the sound of tens of thousands of Argentinians banging their pots and pans, hanging out over their balconies and taking to the streets in a spontaneous protest over something very dear to their hearts, or should I say stomachs. Residents of Buenos Aires are upset about a speech just hours ago made by Argentina's president in which she blamed greedy farmers for the lack of food. There's been a notable shortage of chicken, beef and other produce as a result of a 14-day farmers' strike. The farmers are upset about taxes imposed in recent months on the export of agricultural products. I spoke to the ABC's Richard Reynolds in Buenos Aires.
Well, the farmers themselves out in the countryside are upset about a variety of taxes that have been imposed in recent years, and more particularly in recent weeks, by the federal government. Now, these taxes are designed to increase the prices of exports of agricultural products, particularly wheat, beef, and soybeans. Now, these are the three staples of Argentina as far as exports are concerned.
So as you can see, Craftbrewer, the people are now affected. You and I are affected. Less food coming out of the food-producing bowls of the world, and the farmers are upset because they're not getting the high prices. The government's raking in the money as a consequence of this. You're going to see this more and more around the world. This is a revolution that's slowly but steadily happening around the world as more and more countries realise they've got to rein in their exports and make sure their populations get fed. And what does that mean, Ian, to the world population and the available food?
Well, it's shrinking, the food's shrinking and the population's expanding.
You got that in one. So it is not something, now you can mark my words, Craftbrewer, how does it affect you as a grain brewer? Barley will continue to go up in price, it will become more expensive, get used to it. But I think we've done it to death, have we?
I think it's done and dusted, that one.
Okay.
We'll just wait for incoming responses over the next 2 months.
One person who's not worried about the grain crisis, or put it this way, will always give us the malted barley we need no matter what the grain crisis is David Cryer Malts. David Cryer, supplier of the world-renowned Galaxy Malt, the best two-row exotic malt out there, recommended by craft brewers, professional brewers, mega swill brewers. Go look it up, David Cryer.
Mega swillers.
Will you mind? I'm doing an ad. Or sponsor, as the case may be.
Paying the bills, which you don't get paid for.
Anyway, look up David Cryer. One guy in particular, Ross Kendrick, craftbrewer.com.au. Do look him up. One of the best darn suppliers in Northern Australia. Will supply anywhere, everywhere, quantity, size, not a problem. Do look him up. Anyway, mate, let's roll on this program because it's time for the weird and wacky world of beer. And have we got some information here for you, craft brewer? I tell you, there's so much shit that's going on in the world in beer, it's amazing. Let's start, mate. As I said in the last program, enjoy St. Pat's Day, did you?
Oh, magic, yep, really loved it.
Okay, then. Well, people in New York might have had a bit of a bugbear over St. Pat's Day, it seems. What's the favourite song of St. Pat's Day?
Now, it's not When Irish Eyes Are Smiling.
No.
Danny Boy.
Yeah, the Americans, for some reason, got a fetish for Danny Boy. Danny Boy, the pipes are calling you. Oh, shit.
That's it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it anymore.
I missed that note.
Don't give up your daytime job. You're not going to make it on the stage, I can tell you.
I missed the note. I wasn't ready for it. Anyway, have a listen to this story from New York.
It's the equivalent of banning jingle bells at Christmas time. A New York publican wants to prevent his Guinness-swilling patrons from singing Danny Boy on St. Patrick's Day. Sean Clancy says the Irish classic is one of the most depressing songs of all time and is more appropriate to a funeral than for one of Ireland's great celebrations. In New York, he spoke to our North America correspondent, Michael Rowland.
Oh, Danny Boy, the pipes are calling.
Why don't you like Danny Boy?
Now, that's the first thing I have to put straight. I love Danny Boy. It's a beautiful song. Basically what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to stop it being butchered during the month of March.
Why do you think it's butchered?
Well, here in New York or here in America, March is the Irish. It's the month for the Irish. you know, and everybody's Irish, especially around St. Patrick's Day. And they think that what constitutes being Irish is a pint of Guinness in one hand, belting out their rendition of Danny Boy. And I bartended for 12 years, and I used to hear this, you know, over and over and over again. And I always said, you know what, you know, if I ever had my own bar, you know, I would say, you know what, no Danny Boy for March. And it's a very sad song, you know, and here it's normally played at funerals, you know, and I just felt that there's Ireland is full of great musicians and great songwriters and singers, and we should highlight some of those.
Won't there be a mutiny in your pub if you try to ban Danny Boy being sung on St. Patrick's Day?
St. Patrick's Day probably won't be the biggest problem because there's just so many people here that it's, you know, it's in the build up to it. Like we have Folioke here every Tuesday night, which is karaoke at Foley's, and you know, so that's the biggest thing because the place is just packed, and of course everybody wants to sing. You know, after My Way, probably Danny Boy would be the most sung song, and you know, I just said it's at the free pint of Guinness though. Anybody who sings a song other than Danny Boy gets a free pint of Guinness.
So you think that'll be pretty good incentive?
Well, you know, we have a book full of great Irish songs. You know, some of them are sad, maybe not quite as sad, but they're designed to be butchered. I love the song, but you know, let's leave it to somebody who can sing it.
Oh, Danny Boy, I love you so.
When it's sung properly, it is beautiful, isn't it? Maybe he has a point. New York publican Sean Clancy speaking to Michael Rowland in New York.
Don't you love it?
Oh,
he doesn't want the song to be butchered, so he's banned it.
Yeah, but also I can understand what he's saying about it too. You know, if you listen to it right the way through, not just the little clips they put on newscasts and that, is that it is a rather morbid, sorrowful song, isn't it? It's not a joyful song.
What did he call it? The most depressing song of all time.
Yeah, it would be pretty close to it, I reckon.
I tell you what, just for the sake of it, you know, if I was rich enough, or Bill Gates, I'd hop on a plane just to get the free glass of Guinness if you don't sing it, because that's what he was offering. Yeah. So there you go. To all the people in the United States of America, in fact, all the people around the world who want to be Irish for a day, how about next St. Pat's Day, you don't sing Danny Boy?
You want to be really Irish for a day, just don't put your hand in your pocket. And take money out, that is.
Very good.
Oh, look, I've got one here too.
What, you mean you're actually contributing? You don't contribute a bloody thing to the program. You sit there like a bloody bump on a log.
Who gets the raves about the jokes and everything?
You don't get raves, mate. We get complaints about you.
Who gets a raves about the jokes? Who is the best joke teller on all the podcasts in the world?
Listen, you idiot. I've been told to put you in your place and bring you down a notch.
Okay, you're going to put me in your place. I better stand up and sit on your head.
Okay, what do you got there?
Well, man tells police, I've been raped by a wombat.
I beg your pardon. Say that again.
I've been raped by a wombat.
Oh, you arsehole. Look.
Want to get a third time? I've been raped by a wombat.
A wombat craft brewer. Imagine a koala crawling along the ground.
No, talk about an animal in America. It's no good talking about a wombat or
a koala. Okay, imagine an oversized gopher.
Yeah, that's about it.
A gopher the size of a bloody goat. Right, something like that. It's a big, dumb, burrowing animal in Australia, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, very dumb, very burrowing, and very vicious, too, when they get upset.
Okay, so what story you got?
Well, evidently, he's a 48-year-old orchard worker. He got sentenced 75 hours community work, all right, after calling the police to complain about being raped by a wombat. Arthur Ross Caddock of Montague, that's in New Zealand, by the way, people, called police and informed them that a rape was taking place in his house and he required assistance. This is in the newspaper, this, mind you.
Yeah.
He later called back asking to retract the claim.
So let's get this straight. He's in New Zealand. Wombats aren't even found in New Zealand.
No. That's right.
Yeah.
Apart from speaking Australian now, I'm pretty all right, you know, he told the operator. Evidently, he pleaded guilty in the Nelson District Court to using a phone for fictitious purposes. But I believe from the police prosecutor, alcohol tends to play a large role in Mr. Craddock's life.
A large role. A
large
huge role. Not easy animal doesn't exist in
Now,
New Zealand.
What happened to all these drunks? What happened to the old pink elephant? You know, they were pretty harmless sort of things around the place.
Pink elephants were fine.
Yeah, now we got rampant raving bloody wombats in countries where they don't live.
Jesus. Oh, you got to love drunks, haven't you?
Yeah, at a distance.
Definitely at a distance. Interesting story here coming up about a Dutch wine taster here. You'll just love this story, Ian, because it backs up what we said on a program about tasting and smelling and where the true source of
information
all the taste,
about a drink comes from.
Yeah. When a judge samples a beer or wine, where the true source of the analysis comes from. Have a listen to this story.
He's a leading winemaker and he now boasts one of the most expensively insured noses in the business. If anything happens to Ilya Gort's olfactory organ, he's covered for more than $8 million. The Dutch winemaker is just one of a long list of people to insure their bodily parts. Models, actors and sports people top the list, but not too many Australians have felt the need to keep their bits covered. Lisa Miller reports.
Sporting a black beret and a moustache cascading down the side of his face, Ilya Gort certainly looks a little eccentric, but he says there's nothing unusual about his decision to insure his nose for more than $8 million. The winemaker from the famous Bordeaux region in France says his nose is absolutely essential to his trade, and he knows exactly when he realised he should be looking after it.
I was in a traffic jam, and I looked out of the window, and in a car beside me there was a gentleman picking his nose. And I realized how important a nose was because I was on my way to a wine tasting to make the assemblage of the wines, of my own wines of the chateau. And I had a cold, so I had to call my winemaker off because I couldn't taste, I couldn't smell, I couldn't sniff, I couldn't do anything. So then I realized the nose is the main thing in wine tasting and wine drinking.
He took out the insurance with Lloyd's of London and got a custom-made policy.
There's a long list of activities that are forbidden from now on for me. So from now on I may not go anymore on winter sports. I may not take part of boxing matches. I may not take a job as the target of a knife thrower. And I may not fire breathe.
No motorbike riding either, and only the most experienced barbers are now allowed to trim that moustache. Better not to risk any nicks to the nose. While other winemakers have insured their mouths, Mr. Gort says the tongue only has 5 areas of taste, while the nose can distinguish millions of different scents. Jonathan Thomas is the lead body part underwriter for the Watkins Syndicate at Lloyd's. He says Mr. Gort's policy is not the most unusual he's been asked to consider.
I'm afraid it would have to be chest hair. Some years ago we were asked to come up with a policy to insure the chest hair of a performer. We never actually found out who it was because they didn't buy the policy, but that is the most extreme.
Some of those we do know about: Marlene Dietrich insuring her legs, and Rolling Stone guitarist Keith Richards actually getting paid out for a finger injury while on tour. The star of the American sitcom Ugly Betty had her smile insured. No such demand here in Australia though.
There you go, $8 million for his nose. But get this, didn't you love the things he can't do? He can't do winter sports because he'll probably get a cold. You know, boxing, he gets thumped in the nose and that. What other things can't he do? Oh, that's right, he can't stand in front of a knife thrower. He can't fire breathe. As if you would, of course, but he can't do that. Oh, it just goes on and on. But more importantly, he said on the program, which I loved, he said all the wine tasters insure their mouth, but he realises the taste sensations in the nose. And didn't we cover that on a program about a year ago or 2 years ago?
Oh, yeah, we did, we've covered it a couple of times, actually.
Yeah, that all the taste perceptions are really in the nose. The tongue's like a supplementary organ that sort of refines it, rounds it out.
Yeah. If you don't believe this is true, get on to a really, really good quality beer. If you're a craft brewer, you should be drinking your own anyway. Hopefully they're good quality. And the first time you have a beer in the afternoon or when you first have your first beer of the day, put a bloody peg on your nose and just drink the beer, or pinch your nose so you can't smell anything and just drink the beer. And like Megasville, drinking out of a stubby. You don't bloody get to any aromas whatsoever.
Yeah, you'll taste a totally different beer, won't you?
That's right. That's it. And then, buddy, go away from that, have another beer, come back later and have the same beer, but after you do the normal swill around and sniff and carry on.
Yep, and as I said, I love the story because he shows that, and we covered this on a previous program about a year or 2 years ago about taste perceptions and how you taste a beer. And look up the archives, radio.craftbrewer.org. Very in-depth we got into on this, and this just backs up the information. Further to backing up that information on tasting and judging, Cellarman, here's a story about bees and tasting. Got you stunned, haven't I? Bees and tasting?
Stunned or stung? Stung.
That triple's kicked in, hasn't it?
Yeah. Before we do that, if I was the insurance company, I'd want his nose secured.
A secured collateral.
Yeah, I want it secured in a vault.
Cut it off. Have a listen to this story, Sullivan.
From pollination to winemaking, bees are having a career change. Their astute sense of smell is being used by scientists to develop an ultra-sensitive electronic nose for the wine industry. In Brisbane, Annie Guest reports.
The scientific community is buzzing with the news that bees could help make the perfect wine. Their astute sense of smell is being used to develop an ultra-sensitive electronic nose.
And the plan that CSIRO has is to design especially sensitive electronic noses which you can hold over a wine bottle or over grapes.
Dr. Judith Reinhard from the Queensland Brain Institute is examining how bees learn and process smells. The research will be published later this year, and the CSIRO hopes to use it to develop an electronic nose that can be used by winemakers and other industries. Dr. Reinhard says it could replicate a bee's ability to distinguish between hundreds of aromas.
And then tell just from what the electronic nose tells you what kind of chemicals are in the wine, if it's going to be a good wine or a bad wine.
Researchers test the reaction of 200 bees to molecules contained in complex scents in wine grapes. Dr. Reinhard says each test lasts for 8 hours.
We use the bees, we put them in little holders, and then we blow just a scent over them and give them a little bit of sugar. And they learn to associate the scent that they smell with the sugar water. And we then test different molecules, different chemicals that are inside the scent and blow them over the bee again. And if the bee reacts and sticks out her tongue in anticipation of a sugar reward, we know she learns this chemical. And if she doesn't do it, we know she doesn't learn the other one. And that way we find out what part of a scent bouquet the bee actually learns.
From this, scientists learn how to design the right receptors for an electronic nose. But could it really replace the sniff and the gargle? The head winemaker at Yalumba, Louisa Rose, is not threatened.
It's extremely exciting. It's not that winemakers don't like using their own noses and trust their own noses, but there are many parts of both winemaking, viticulture, and sort of certainly research and development where something that's a little bit analytical as well as having sensory abilities would be marvellous.
Louisa Rose says it could overcome the potential for human error.
We all have our blind spots, which is why most winemakers would taste, in groups, and certainly, get other people's input as well as their own. And one of the advantages, I suppose, about an electronic nose is that we hope it won't have a blind spot.
You say that winemakers like to use their own noses, but could those noses be usurped by the electronic nose?
Well, I certainly hope not. But you never know. But seriously, I don't think that's the case. I think it's really a case of being able to quantify a lot of the things that we know that we can smell. And certainly the electronic noses are showing that they may well have great discernibility at very low thresholds of characteristics as well. So we might be able to use them to help, what we do traditionally as winemakers. And
for the wine consumer, what could it mean?
One of the really exciting ways that I said this could work is helping us understand the differences, the real differences between different regions and how they produce different flavours and characteristics in wines. So it might give, ultimately the consumers a little bit more understanding of regionality as well.
Now, the sheer fact that they're using bees in a taste test for wine to pick up extra smells, they're way off the mark, mate. What do we get round here? In fact, look at the bastards flying around it now.
All the flies.
Oh, Christ.
They're a good indicator.
Why don't they use flies? Flies are far better. Look at them all. They seem to know what they're looking for.
Yeah, you always tell when you got a good beer around the place.
Yeah, 50,000 flies move in to have a sip, they do. Oh, piss off. Anyway, so that's the first thing. But the other interesting thing she said, which backs up again what we've said about judging, tasting, a couple of things. And again, look up the archives, Craftbrewer, radio.craftbrewer.org. 1, wine tasters tend to taste in groups because they acknowledge that they have blind spots in their tasting profile. And the commentator acknowledged that, didn't he, Cellarman?
He did. He did at that.
Oh, I think it's she, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the first thing. And the second thing that we've always said on the program, most tasters have, when they taste anything, will have a profile of about 3 tastes that will dominate and the rest will cascade back. And that's a personal preference. By having a group tasting, you tend to cover the gamuts of the flavours. And I just love the way that this program, or this article, covered that nicely. But I think they've got it all wrong, mate. Flies are the go.
Flies are the go, mate.
In fact, can't you...
We can export them flies if they want them.
Yeah. In fact, I think I can just see it. A judging panel lined up. You've got the judges there, and they've all got the little pet flies, all tied off with little bits of hair.
No.
Flying
You
around.
get the beer, you get the wine out, and all of a sudden you open the bottle full of flies.
Yep.
Find where they go.
See which one goes where. So what you'd have is, you can picture it now, a judging competition, got all the beers laid out, you have them there and you say, right, we've all tasted them, yep, that's what the flies say. And what you do is you get a big box of them, you just open it up and you count how many flies land on each glass. That'll be it.
Yep.
You won, you got 65%.
The beer of the show.
Beer of the show, you got 65% of all the flies. I think it's just brilliant, my friend. But anyway, let's get on to some really weird and wacky shit, shall we?
And that wasn't wacky?
No, this gets wackier. Have a listen to this story. In Australia, we have our refugee policy that's world-renowned, and we resettle a lot of refugees, don't we?
Oh, yeah, we do, to Marrow Atoll, and where the French are doing their testing at present.
And all over the Pacific Islands. Not in Australia, but we just resettle them everywhere else around the world. But anyway, how's this for a story that is so illogical it's amazing?
In Victoria, senior police are advising the Immigration Department about how and where to settle troubled African refugees. Police believe the families should be settled in country towns such as Mildura and Sale. They say living in Housing Commission flats in Melbourne's inner west and in the city's east leaves them too susceptible to the temptations of drugs and alcohol. Instead, they believe it would be far better for families and young men to be living first in smaller, quieter towns as a way of settling into Australia from now on. Alison Caldwell reports from Melbourne.
Much has been written about the problems faced by African refugees when it comes to settling into Australian life. While most have no problems whatsoever, there are some who do. According to police, too often young men are influenced by drugs and alcohol, which only adds to their problems with settling in. The solution, they say, is to move young men and their families, including recently arrived and new refugees, to country areas of Victoria, including Mildura in the north and Sale in the east.
Yeah, mate, that's what you need to do. Don't have them around the city where they could be under the influence of alcohol. Move them out to the country.
Country where they'll be part of the alcohol.
There's more alcoholics in the country than the city. In fact, the alcohol problem in the country is probably 10 times worse than anything in the city you'd ever cop.
It's just that there's more people in the city.
In fact, you can't miss a country town. For every 10 pubs, there's a shop.
Yep, that's the one.
They want to move the refugees to the country to protect them from alcohol? Oh, that's real bright. And don't believe me, Craftbrewer, that country town is not full of alcoholics? Oh, Ian, you're going to love this story. Have a listen to what the police force does in Western Queensland.
In Queensland, questions are finally being asked after a police officer who'd drunk 18 beers was called back to duty, breath-tested a driver and allegedly ended up in a pub brawl. Those alleged events are reported to have happened 3 years ago, but police hierarchy are only now ordering an investigation, a day after the media uncovered the story. The man at the centre of the controversy, Senior Constable Adam Reedy, has since been promoted and moved to a different district. Nicole Butler reports from Brisbane.
Yesterday, the front page of Queensland's major newspaper shouted damning allegations about shocking police standards and cover-ups. It was reported that Senior Constable Adam Reedy had admitted in court last month to drinking at least 18 beers before going on duty at Cunnamulla in the state southwest. The off-duty policeman had been enjoying an all-day drinking session and was at the Warrego Hotel around 10 p.m. when he was asked by colleagues to conduct a random breath test. Senior Constable Reedy allegedly then went to another hotel, drank 2 rums and declared himself on duty just before 1 o'clock the next morning so he could make an arrest. It's alleged a local woman spat on him, sparking a brawl that ended in the policeman being flown to a nearby hospital for treatment. That string of events allegedly happened on the 14th of May 2005. Almost 3 years later, and Queensland Police hierarchy has just announced it will investigate the matter. The police union is outraged. President Cameron Pope has told ABC Talkback Radio in Brisbane the officer involved has done nothing wrong.
Let's be clear about the fact that he was not on any roster duty that day. He was subject to be called back to duty, which he wasn't aware of at the time. He was on a day off and quite entitled to do what every other member of the public wants to do on their days off.
He's quite entitled to have 20 drinks on his day off?
Of course he's a member of the public if he wants to have a drink.
Or 20?
Or 20.
Mr Pope doesn't know what Constable Reedy's blood alcohol level was when he was performing the random breath test.
Well, there's no insinuation that he was actually drunk. You've got to remember that this was alcohol was consumed over a very long length of time. We're looking at more than 12, 16 hours.
And the QPU president says there was no complaint lodged at the time.
No, the point I'm trying to make is that there was no allegation of impropriety or bad behaviour by the person who was tested. He made no complaint whatsoever about the matter. So he was obviously happy that all procedures and protocols were followed.
Senior Constable Reedy has since been promoted to plainclothes detective and he's been moved north to Cairns. Mr Pope says no action should be taken against the policeman now.
I can't see why anything should happen. This was an officer who was subject to the conditions of being out west with minimum staffing levels. He was required to do something. He performed it without complaint from any person and was then brutally assaulted without provocation in a hotel by a large number of persons. I don't see what he's got to answer for.
Don't you love it? He has 18 beers and does then a random breath test on motorists because he's asked to go out. And get this, as soon as he does it, goes back to the pub, has a few more rum and cokes, next minute, gets into a brawl. So what does he do? Puts himself on duty again and then arrests the brawlers. But what I love about it all is the Minister of Police says, oh, it's fine, not a problem, really. And the police union really get there and says, hey, I got nothing wrong with what he's doing. This is the sort of place they're going to send these refugees to.
Of course. Well, we resettle them into a...
And that's to avoid the alcohol problem, right?
Yep, that's it.
But what I love about it, I don't know if you picked it up, the commentator gets there and says, right, aren't you worried that he's drinking 20 drinks a day? Isn't that a worry? And what does the police union says? Nah. What's worrying about that? What's wrong? and then the police union goes, he wasn't drunk.
I think their comment would have been, it's a very big concern there. He's lacking behind something chronic. His mates drink 25.
That's it. I would have thought he would have been in trouble for doing light drinking.
Yeah, that's it. He's not keeping his end of the deal up.
And for those in Queensland, don't worry, there's another 10,000 coppers just like him. It's a big worry, my friend. But one to finish off, and this is a true story. You would never have thought brewing at home could save your house, your life, and your family, would you, mate?
Well, it has mine already.
Yeah.
You
don't see your wife after about 7 o'clock at night, so that's all right.
Yeah, I drink, I get drunk, I fall down. I go to sleep.
This is apparently a true story. Bloke is at home, having a beer in the house, next minute the lights go out. Wonders what's going on, so he walks outside. All the street lights are on. So he says, hang on, it's not a blackout in the street. Walks around the house to the fuse box thinking, oh yeah, the fuse is blown. As he walks around to the side of the house, the garage is on fire. Apparently, the clothes dryer, which is a device for the crafter who doesn't know, it blows hot air onto clothes to dry them. Anyway, it's caught fire. So, panic sets in, of course, doesn't it, mate? The garage is on fire. It's attached to the house. So he runs inside to get the fire extinguisher. Now, you know how quickly fires take hold, especially in homes. They really can take hold quick.
Oh, yeah.
In that short time, he runs into the house and comes out. Those little portable fire extinguishers we have in our homes.
Yeah, they won't put out a bloody good strong candle.
That's it. They wouldn't put out a bloody a newspaper on fire. They wouldn't. Well, the garage is well alight. So he panics, grabs the kids, grabs the wife, out into the front yard, calls the fire brigade. Now, here's the funny bit, mate. The fire brigade arrives. There's no fire. The fire's out. Everybody's looking around like stunned mullets, aren't they? What's going on here? You know, you can tell the garage was full flame. Now there's not a bit of fire left. It's all out. You know what happened, mate? Well, he's got all his home brew gear.
Yeah. Well, I got two options of home brew and that. Maybe his bottles exploded and doused the flames.
Close. It's a good scenario, but not the case.
I know a bloke who actually used his beer bottles to put a fire out.
I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. But in this case, what happened was he had a CO2 cylinder attached to all his brew gear in the fridges, all his kegs. He had a CO2 cylinder there. Well, the fire races in, melts the plastic lines, doesn't it? CO2 cylinder's on. Next minute, a dirty big CO2 cylinder sprays CO2 gas all through the garage, doesn't it? And puts out the fire.
he must have had a big bloody CO2 cylinder.
Oh, it must have been one of those huge ones, but it put out the fire. And apparently, that's what saved his house. So there you go. To all those whinging, she who must be obeyed out there who say, craft brewing at home is a waste of time. It can save your house, save your life, save your family. To all you henpecked guys out there,
start brewing.
Start brewing, grow some balls and tell her you can brew and save their lives. But I know a guy whose car caught on fire and he raced out and got bottled beer and started, shaking it and just cranking the lids, tops off, and he put out the fire in his car with bottled beer. So it can be done, can't it?
Oh, yeah. It's virtually a fire extinguisher, isn't it?
It is a fire extinguisher. Well, that's enough, I think.
I think so. Maybe we should get to the topic of the day.
Let's do it, shall we, so we can finish up, shall we? Our topic of the day, and I've got a number of emails on this, and let's see if I can paraphrase all these emails into one main email. And let's see, I've got a few here. Cellarman... What's this shit about Cellarman and Graham? No, it's Graham. Okay. Yes, I know you tend to cover the more advanced aspects of brewing, and I like this.
That's why he's addressed it to me.
Please. But I am a beginner and want to get into the hobby. In fact, I haven't brewed at all and am a bit wary.
How can you be a bloody beginner?
Well, how much more beginner do you want to be?
He's not a beginner yet.
Look, will you shut up and stop interrupting, you bloody moron? Now... That's it. See that, craft brewer? I'm standing up for you lot out there, and put the stick away, will you please? Wait, you want me to get the mute button out? Put it away. Put it away. Anyway, he wants to get into the hobby. The trouble is, he says, all these programs either confuse me, I've got to add this, add that, forget this, forget that, and they all say different things, and it's utterly confusing. Or they assume that I can get all this gear they talk about, whatever carboids are, hops, malt, there's another one here. I live in China and I just can't get the ingredients all these new programs talk about. Are you able to tell me a simple way I can improve my beers? And here's another one. Can you give me something simple to start me off to show me that beers can be good? So I guess, Cellarman, the problem is here simply. A lot of programs are getting too complicated for beginners. They're listening to it, they're hearing that we're making great beers, and they're confusing even the most beginner person out there, aren't they?
That's what it sounds like to me. It's too much information too early.
Far too early, right? And they also don't realise what it's like for a beginner to get into the
You've
hobby.
got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
You've
but
got
they
to
don't-
start somewhere.
But a lot of these shows forget what it's like and how confusing and worrying it is as a beginner to even think about it. They don't know the lingo, they don't understand the jargon, and they don't understand the apprehension of investing into this hobby, do they?
Well, no, that's right. It's not a great investment into it, but there's still a fair whack of money to get yourself started and to find out your first beer tastes like shit and turns all your mates
That's
off.
it. It's very scary. And, of course, the other thing, of course, is we're international, and many of the countries we broadcast to just don't have the gear, all these programs.
Or the
talk
ingredients.
about. Exactly. Now, do you remember when you first tried to brew?
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm still in the back of my memory like it was yesterday.
Right, and there was no information out there, so you've got to think like that again, Ian, haven't you? I can remember when I first brewed, all you relied on was the instructions under the lid of the tin, didn't you?
Did it come in tins?
And the quality was shit because there was no internet, there were no books, there was absolutely nothing really around, especially if you're in remote areas where you couldn't get the proper ingredients.
Well, as even in the bloody capital cities, where I first started, and when we first started, brew kits just weren't available.
And I'll go further. I can remember getting into this and thinking to myself, do I want to spend the sort of money they're talking about buying the gear, buying the bottles, buying the cappers, buying the fermenters? I don't know what it's going to taste like. Do you remember that apprehension?
Oh, yeah, no, very much so, very much so.
Because it was, for a poor university student, it was an expensive investment just to even get the simplest brew gear. So in this program, Cellarman, we're going to cover the sheer basics of someone round the world. Doesn't matter where you are, craft brewer. If you're in the middle of the Sahara Desert, South Africa, China, India, Russia, South America.
Iceland.
There you go. On an iceberg, being harvested in the fields of Iceland. Who knows? Wherever you are.
In America even. We can teach you how to brew.
We can teach you in the United States how to brew. You're an Eskimo. We will teach you the fundamentals. And this may shock quite a few so-called experts out there how simple we're going to make this. Because strangely enough, Ian, a kit and kilo makes a decent beer, doesn't it?
It makes a very, very decent beer,
If you do it properly.
That's right.
And we're going to cover that. So we're not going to cover half the things. We're not going to cover adding extra malt. We're not going to cover getting hops, getting yeast, because many of these countries can't get the shit, can they?
Well, this is true. They can't. And I know for a fact, when I wanted to start my friend off in India with brewing, when I first went over there the first time, and I said, listen, he said, I want some of your home brew or some home brew. What do I need? I said, this is what you need to buy. And he got back to me and says, I can't get that here. I just can't get it. I end up sending him cans of brew over there to make.
Exactly. You don't realise to the people who podcast, brewcast, beercast, if you're doing this round the world, many countries can't get the so-called gear that you assume is readily available. It may be a world economy, but there's bloody poverty-stricken areas all around the world, or areas that you can't get the gear.
It's not so much even poverty-stricken. It's so much part of their culture that they don't do it and they don't have these things.
Okay, so let's get into it. We mentioned that the ordinary kit that most, in fact all, and let's assume every beginner brewer can get at least a kit and kilo. That's a tin of
prepared malt with hops in it.
It might be Cooper's.
Yep.
It's the most internationally recognised brand, but there's others out there. And they can get a kilo of sugar.
Yep.
That is fine, but fresh is best. We've shown on this program that even those tin malts can go off and give off flavours, can't we?
Oh, yeah, you can get a very, how'd you say, metallic taste to some beers. Or the other one is a very burnt, like you're drinking water out of a garden hose that's been sitting in the sun for 2 days.
Exactly. So the very first thing we're looking at in the tin is what?
Freshness, and as young as possible.
Now, if you look underneath the lid, craft brewer, you will see a date. In Australia, they have a use-by date 2 years in advance of when they're canned. You will go and look for the most advanced date you can find in a shop or a supplier if you can. And I'll use that term carefully, if you can.
Yeah. Another way to look at it too is you won't get a use-by date, you'll get a best before date. So it's the same thing, but they write it different ways.
Okay. Now, in the shops, if you've got two shops to choose from, one has a hot shop with no refrigeration, one's in like a supermarket or an air-conditioned shop. Which one do we go for?
The one that's the coolest as possible.
So you're looking for tins that are kept cool. You get your tin, take it home. What do you do with your tin? You mightn't use it straight away.
Keep it in the fridge is the best place for it.
If you don't have a fridge?
Somewhere nice and cool and dark.
That's it. So, it's a food. The malt extract you're going to use is a food, craft brewer. Keep it cool. Look for the freshest possible. And once you get it, still keep it cool as much as... I know guys who bury them even.
Mm. Well, the prime thing with it, or the very easiest way to say this, use it as soon as you buy it.
If you can.
Yep.
Okay. Now, as a craft brewer, you'll follow the instructions on the lid. What would be the next most important thing you would tell any beginner craft brewer?
Well, not going into sanitation and all that sort of thing, I'd say when you actually put your beer or your brew down, is once again, try and ferment as cool as possible.
Exactly. If we're talking about trying to get a clean taste with your product here, beginner craft brewer, and the most critical thing for a clean taste is to get the temperature around 18 degrees.
Maybe we should change that. Not as cool as possible, as temperate as possible, because let's face it, if you're in Iceland, you'd be trying to get it up.
Exactly, Ian. You don't want to get it as cool as possible. You want to get it temperate, lukewarm. Try to find a way of knocking the temperature off if you're in a warm climate, warming it up. Get it around 18 degrees.
That's the best way to say it. No matter where you are, the best fermentation temperature, especially for kit and kilo type, is around about 18 degrees.
Now, let's face it, most of these countries may not even have a thermometer. We're talking about cool. You know, if you touch it, it's cool, but not cold.
No,
Would that be a best way of describing it?
That's the best way to describe it.
Now, whether you use a fridge, ice blocks, again, I've seen people half bury fermenters into the ground to try to cool them down in hot African climates and whatever. Try to cool them down.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, if you put a cardboard box around a fermenter and put a fan circulating the air around it, it drops the temperature compared to outside that box by about 3 to 4 degrees.
It does. Try anything and everything to keep it cool. All right. You did mention about cleaning agents, but yes, cleanliness is next to godliness.
No, it's not. It is godliness.
In this case.
Yes.
So, Cellarman, we're not going to talk about Star San and all these other weird PVW, weird ingredients that you can buy.
Neo-pink, bloody Cellarman.
That's it. What will we be looking for? Because we're talking about the most basic of basics, something that's round the world and freely available.
Good. Actually, the first thing I'd say is good hot boiling water.
Yep. Next,
something that's available virtually anywhere in the world, caustic soda.
Yep, that's a good cleaning agent.
It's an excellent cleaning agent.
It will clean anything. And third thing?
Bleach.
All right, so what we're talking about here, craft brewers, use the chemicals available, clean everything. If you're looking at two things, having a sterile surface or having a clean surface.
You'll never get a sterile surface.
That's right. You're better off making sure the surface is clean and rinsing the bleach out. I'll word it this way, craft brewer. I've said this many times before. You can sterilise shit, but you wouldn't want it in your beer.
No.
So the same thing applies to all your equipment, including the bottles. Strangely enough, just rinsing bottles will not clean them because it forms a film on the inside of all the residual ingredients from the previous bottle. So a good cleaner that cleans it. If you clean it, you're 99% there to having an infection-free beer, aren't you, Cellarman?
Very much so. The trick is too, and I'll say this, which no one brings up, basic, it's very basic. You've got a plastic fermenter, and it can be any sort of thing. It could be about what do you call it, an oil or a fat
drum.
A fat drum, a plastic one. Don't ever use steel wool on them.
That's it, and we'll get on to that now. So, cleanliness first, sterilisation is optional, and that might shock a few people, but I'll say that because, as I said, a clean surface has very few bugs on it.
You can't sterilise anyway. What you can do is sanitise.
That's it. Now, we talked about a clean surface, no thing. A clean fermenter. Whatever you ferment in, craft brewer, around the world, find the cleanest possible surface with fewer scratches as possible to clean in. Your fermentation bucket doesn't have to be sealed. You can put Glad wrap over the top of it, plastic over the top of it. It doesn't matter, but it must be clean and as scratch-free as possible, shouldn't it?
That's right. The thing is, with what we say about that, it needs to be food grade. That's a big thing. You know, buying a brand new plastic rubbish bin and sterilising and sanitising and everything like that is all very good, but you need virtually to throw it out after the first beer because, or the first brew, because it's not food grade plastic and it does leach into the beer. Right? So you got food grade plastic, whatever it is. Don't use steel wool on, because as soon as you do that, or even a hard brush, you scratch the surface. And what happens if you've got scratches? You've got bacteria gets into them, and no matter how much you're going to clean it next time, you're not going to get that bacteria out.
And finally, we bottle our beer. What do we do with our bottles, Cellarman?
We make sure they're the same treatment as the bloody fermenter. They're bloody cleaned out thoroughly, and on top of that, don't forget the caps.
That's it. And where do we store them?
In a nice, cool, dark place.
Bury them if you have to, if you're in countries where you don't have it.
And
don't let them exposed to light. Don't put them in the back shed at 45 degrees Celsius. Somewhere where they're cool. It's a food. It will go off just as quick as any food. As I said, I've known guys who bury their stuff in hot country towns because they haven't got the storage.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it.
Nope.
Okay, then. So let's summarise this as Ian gets me another beer. Look for the freshest kit possible. Ferment cool. Use a good cleaning agent like bleach or caustic. Have a clean fermenter. And once you bottle, keep them cool and out of the light.
Yep, cool and dark. Pretend they're mushrooms.
Exactly. And I think we've bored the craft brewer yet again with enough information.
No, I got enough beer left here to bore them a bit more.
All right, then. Now, Ian, it's time to give you shit again because I got emails about how you don't respond to things. And normally at this time, I allow you to say that rubbishing crap that you normally say.
Well, who gives a shit?
Yeah. Well, I got an email from Will, and he says, I just listened to your Easter show and did not hear anything about my attempts at a solution to your phrase. Maybe it did not make it past the filters.
You're right, it didn't.
No, Will. The slack bugger didn't bother to answer you. Simple as that.
On the filter. It didn't make it past the filter. Simple as that.
Anyway, because I think I have the solution, I was disheartened to hear of other guys' feeble attempts and not my attempt. Ian, how dare you treat the listener that badly?
Hey.
Will's upset.
Hey.
You prick.
Will.
You dick.
Will. Get a life.
You dick. How dare you? Just contact me, Craft Brewer, Graham L. Sanders at Westnet.
And he still doesn't know the answer anyway.
I don't know the answer, unfortunately. Take a look at my email below and tell me if I'm close. So let's have a look at this email that he did send to you that you wouldn't answer. No, I'll read this out to you. He puts here, I've spelt out the words to the phrase and done some investigation. And we'll do this again for you. How do you say that phrase again?
I'm not allowed to say it, you said.
Say it.
You really want me to say it?
Say it.
You really want me to say it, do you?
Oh, I'll bloody say it.
Thagu Barra Bataloo.
That's T-H-A-A-G-U. B-A-R-R. He's got here E. It should be A.
A, yep. Barra.
He's got B-A-R-R-E. It's
like
wrong
the fish.
there. Barra. B-A-R-R-A. So that's where he's probably in trouble. And he's got B-A-T-H-A-L-U. Is that right? Okay, so what he's got here is Thagu means drink. Is that right?
Well, what's the rest
say?
What's the rest say?
Is that
I've already told them that part of it. Everyone knows.
But they don't know which part meant drink. Does Thagu mean drink?
Yes.
Okay, so we got drink something something.
Yes.
Okay, he's got here.
You're trying to get it out, aren't you?
Yes.
You're trying to suck it out of me. Yeah. You're not going to make it.
He's got Barra or Barry, which I think he's got the wrong word, as buffalo. I don't think drink buffalo is right, is it?
Drink buffalo piss.
Well, we call it mega swell or cat's piss.
4X.
4X, but it's not buffalo, is it?
No.
But he's got it spelt wrong. It's B-A-R-R-A. And he's got Bathaloo as gossip. Is he close on the gossip?
Nowhere near it. But being using those last two words, you could create a lot of gossip.
Okay. The meaning of this phrase is something like drunken babbler or the babble by some drunken person. So he's saying something like, it's like drink, you drunken bum, or something like that. Is that?
Now you know why I didn't answer him.
Yeah. Is that right?
No, it's nowhere near it. Nowhere near it.
No, but drink is right. Okay. Is it something similar, he says, to it's the alcohol speaking?
No.
No, so it's not the alcohol speaking?
Absolutely nothing to do with it. The only thing to do with alcohol or any other thing to do with any like that is drink.
Okay. All right, you still got to look it up, Craftbrewer. Let's finish this program off, Cellarman.
Yeah.
Any final words?
Oh, what's the good anyway? I've already said it 3 times.
Say it again.
Thank Barra Buffalo.
And I'm your brewmaster, Graham Sanders, and I thank you yet again for joining us on this rubbish that we call a brewcast.
The top brewcast, but.
Oh, the top one, yes, thanks to Johnny.
So my other ones must be really rubbish.
I always receive song requests. I got this song request to play on behalf of the Cellarman, so why not? So for the Cellarman, till we meet again, it's your shout, mate.
Well, I remember when I was a pup, I used to think that I was all grown up, standing on a milk crate in a beer joint at a pinball machine. Yeah, all the gals told Daddy I was cute. They liked my hat and little cowboy boots. They'd ask me to dance, I'd say yes ma'am, feeling like a king. I was a beer joint baby, Mama couldn't save me. Daddy had me there all the time. My bottle was a long neck when my ears were still wet, but it didn't take 'em long to dry. I can throw darts, shoot, pull, shoot, breeze, shoot the bull, and talk like a sailor in the Navy. I was a line dancing, two-stepping, cotton-picking, hell-raising kid, a beer joint baby. Sometimes when we'd leave, Daddy would be in the wintry sheets. So he'd sit me in his lap and let me drive on those back roads. But there were times when I'd be half-lit, 'cause he never kept up with my sins. I wound up in ditches, hit some fences, but always got home. I was a beer joint baby, Mama couldn't save me. Daddy had me there all the time. My bottle was a long neck when my ears were still wet, but it didn't take 'em long to dry. I can throw darts, shoot, pull, shoot, breeze, shoot the bull, and talk like a sailor in the Navy. I was a line dancing, two-stepping, cotton-picking, hell-raising kid, a beer joint baby. Yeah, Daddy says now that he ain't too proud for raising me the way that he did. But I'd have to disagree, 'cause if it were up to me, I'd go back and do it all once again. But I was a beer joint baby, Mama couldn't save me. Daddy had me there all the time. And my bottle was a long neck when my ears were still wet, but it didn't take 'em long to dry. I could throw darts, shoot, pull, shoot, breeze, shoot the bull, and talk like a sailor in the Navy. I was a line dancing, two-stepping, cotton-picking, hell-raising kid, a beer joint baby. No, Mama couldn't save